the way I'm going to do the presentation today, people, is I'm going to do this through a piece of software called WIP, which is totally internet-based. It's a sharing platform, and it can be used to put presentations together very, very quickly. You can put sort of internet galleries together in seconds, really. You just drop stuff in. And it's really handy as well because you can just take stuff off the internet and drop it in there quickly. You can drop in Vimeo clips and YouTube clips very quickly too. And I need to remember and remind myself to slow down and enunciate very well, because you might have gathered I am very Scottish and I sometimes have the enthusiasm of a St. Bernard puppy. So again, that speeds me up a little bit. And I realise that in recording this to Panopto, we're going to have automatically produced captions, and those automatically produced captions sometimes struggle quite badly with a Scottish accent. So I'm going to go slow and enunciate well. Okay, so we're going to engage in a unit called Digital Imaging and Production, okay, as part of the BA Commercial Photography course. Of course, this is unit introduction. The first thing I'm going to say to you people is please don't panic. The words that are written on the first page of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, okay? We're living in strange times, very strange times indeed, and very uncertain times. And you're just about to engage in something that, you know, could cause some anxiety. I fully appreciate that too. And you're not alone in those anxieties. Those are on both sides of the screen, okay? But everything's going to be okay. We're going to get through this absolutely fine. And remember, folks, it's only photography. You know what I mean? It's not anything sort of that's going to threaten lives, okay? It's only photography. And again, I fully appreciate that, you know, people's sort of resolve is going to be tested through this. I understand people are going to feel sort of stretched through this, and you're not alone through that, okay? And again, to get a bit vulnerable, speaking as somebody who struggled with mental health issues through their life, who struggled with addiction issues through their life as well, I fully understand these things, and I have my own ways of getting through them. Personally speaking, I have a very strong yoga practice. I try and do a physical yoga practice every day, and I meditate every day. And I find those things to be hugely beneficial to my life, absolutely enormously beneficial, that enable me to navigate my life in a sort of meaningful way, keeping some sort of calm equilibrium, okay? So we fully appreciate we're all human beings, we're all facing this together, and just find a way of getting through yourself. And remember, if you need any help, email me. I'll try and be there for you best as I can. But bear in mind, I am a 0.5 member of staff as well. So if I don't get back to you straight away, please understand that, but I will get back to you, okay? Okay, the big no phone sign, okay? I suppose in this situation, it means no distractions. During the sessions, we're going to have together try and have no distractions. Don't have one foot in your phone and one foot in the session, okay? Try and commit to the session as much as you possibly can. We've not got that many sessions together when it comes to it. We really haven't. And what I'll be giving you is very, very concentrated information. There won't be a spare word, I will tell you, okay? The one things I've got to do with these sessions when I design and plan them is make sure I'm not overloading you. I'm not giving you too much information so you go away with your head spinning. We're dealing with vast subjects. Photoshop is a deep, deep program, okay? So what I'm trying to do is calibrate it so you've just got enough information to encourage you, but enough that's going to sustain you, okay? So again, try and stay focused during the sessions and give yourself to the sessions, okay? Stick your phone away. Don't be looking at any other chat in the meantime. Okay, so always read my emails. Always, always, always. I will not send you any email that's any frivolous information. I won't tell you about a dog I've just seen or something like that, okay? They'll always contain the most up-to-date information. If my emails contradict the timetable, go with the information in my email. There'll always be the right information in the email, okay? That doesn't really matter so much this time. I'll reiterate that at the beginning of the next unit in the spring term, okay? But always read my emails. They're always important. Okay. Right, if you read this, it's terribly dull, but you know, it's about the attendance rules in Zoom. And the first line there that's in the quotation marks are not from me. These are from the Zoom etiquette protocols that have been handed out by the institution. So again, if you're over 10 minutes late, you've been marked absent. It's at the tutor's discretion whether you can stay for a session, okay? Now, what I'm going to say to you, this is mine at the bottom, okay? If you're more than 15 minutes late for a session, don't join. You won't catch up. Like I say, we're doing stuff that's very information intensive, okay? And again, you'll drag behind. If you do find yourself late for a session, and people do find themselves late, and it's not a problem, okay? As long as you've got a reasonable reason for being late, email me. I'll try and fit you in a session later on. And also as well, all the sessions I'll be doing, I'll send you sort of related videos from LinkedIn Learning. Also the lesson, one of the lessons we'll put up on Panopto, and that link will be emailed to you, okay? So again, all the sessions we do when it comes to learning software will be accessible, okay? So again, even if you don't make a session, you can access it, but please try and make the sessions because again, they're nice, you can ask questions, they've got a nice dynamic to them, and we can engage with each other. And that's what teaching's about, isn't it? It's about setting each other on fire, isn't it? It's not just about sort of rote learning. Okay. And just to let you know, if you miss something, you pay a lot of money for your education these days. If you miss a session, it's the same as £125. Simple as that. And I could be terribly blasé about this and turn around and say, oh, look, I get the same money and stuff like that. But it does bother me when people don't show up. You know what I mean? It bothers me in the fact that, you know, you're missing out on something. I want you to get the best education you possibly can, okay? And again, there's a little thing there about watching the K Foundation burn £1 million. That ages me quite a bit. But again, I'd strongly advise you to look up the KLF and the K Foundation and what they did in Jura with that £1 million. It's an interesting story. Okay. Nice little infographic for you, okay, just to show you your comfort zone, the little sort of figure you'd usually find in a toilet door with a circle around it, and where the magic happens. And what that's showing you is where the magic happens is beyond your comfort zone, okay? Simple as that. If you find yourself in a situation where you're feeling uncomfortable, you're feeling your notions about photography being challenged, you're feeling your notions about your efficacy within photography being challenged, you're feeling your notions about what you thought to be true in photography challenged, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, just because you feel uncomfortable and just because you feel things aren't quite right, doesn't mean something good's not happening. Okay, so try and push yourself beyond your comfort zone. If you keep it safe, things will stay safe. And generally, from my experience, you won't move on. The experience I gave was when I was commissioned to go to China. I was in a factory where nobody spoke English. We'd been there for about 5 days. I was still horrendously jet lagged. I hadn't really slept. I felt terrible. I felt I was wasting my time. I didn't even know why I was pushing the shutter on my camera. And when I came back from it, that work was the best work I made in that trip. So just because your feelings and your sort of mental chatter tell you things aren't going quite right, chances are everything's okay and you're pushing yourself. Okay, here's the interesting stuff, the terribly interesting stuff. Okay, this tells you a bit about what this unit is, okay? And what I'm going to try and do in this presentation is try and decode, demystify, and humanize the situation you have to be in here. We're on a degree, we're on something academic. That means this wonderful creative process of making photographic work and having it assessed and having it critiqued and you having a great learning and photographic journey has to be shoehorned into an academic framework, and we have to assess that in a certain way. And in that happening, there's a a deadening process. Okay, so let's try and demystify a deadening process so we can understand it and move on from it. Okay, so here it is here, your level floor. The credit points are 20. It's 20 credit points. Okay, that means the study time is 200 hours. Okay, so when we look at your work and assess it, what we want to see is something that justifies 200 hours of production and study time. That's one of the metrics we use to assess it. You know all this stuff here. My name's Martin Coyne. You can contact me in the email address here. The phone number you probably won't get me on at all because that's the office phone number, so don't worry about that. Always try and get me through email, okay? Email is probably the best way to do it. Our subject librarian is Alan Turner. You probably met Alan. He's a good dude. It commences today. It commences on the 23rd of October 2020. and the submission is the 22nd of January 2021 at 12 p.m. Okay, that's when the submission deadline is. This is a pass-fail unit. Usually you would have your units graded in the usual way, be it sort of first, 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and so on. But this time round, we're going to assess your unit and see if it passes or fails. This is a pilot scheme that's been piloted by the AUB, and this is the one unit within level 4. It's been chosen to be the pass and fail unit, and this is the way we'll assess this. I suppose in times of COVID, it's maybe a gentler way of doing things, people think, I suppose. But there's talk of this making this sort of the way you grade level 4 units. I personally don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to have your work graded from the start so you understand what the metric is and understand what these units are, because in reality, level 4 is a pass and fail thing. You know, all you need to do is pass level 4. So your marks only matter as an indicator of how hard you've got to work to get certain grades. I think you know that from the start. It's a good idea, but who am I to reason why? But this unit shall be pass or fail. We'll talk about that later. Okay, here we have the description for it. And I've already sent you the link to the unit handbook. I've sent you the link to this. All these assets will be at your fingertips. I've also sent you the scheme of work, so you can see the scheme of work. And also, the scheme of work has live links in it. So you can use the live links in the scheme of work to get into the Zoom meetings. Okay, so digital in production examines the use of contemporary technology and its influence and practices used in the contemporary commercial photography world, helping you develop a working understanding of the fundamental methods of digital in production. This unit introduces you to the potential of established and emerging technologies used in the making of digital photography, including capture and post-production. Using this knowledge, you'll identify opportunities to apply established approaches to and experiment with emerging technologies in the development of your photographic practice, okay? So that's a fairly sort of technical and sort of vague and opaque way of talking about the unit. Let's say the unit is about your digital workflow, and your digital workflow will be managed by your computer and your use of a couple of Adobe Suite and Creative Cloud programs, namely Bridge, Camera Raw, and Photoshop. So what we'll be doing is learning how to ingest your digital stills into a computer, organize them in a meaningful way, and then get them into Photoshop via Camera Raw, process them that way, manipulate them, and find the best possible practices to output them to print and web. Simple as that. This is what this is about. It's to enable you to have those skills. And the idea, I think, between both units, both this one and principles and practices, is so everyone here has a parity of skills. So they've got the same level of skills as everybody else. So when it comes to level 5, when you go into next year, there's a level playing field. Everybody's got the same set of skills to work for. So again, everybody's got the same place to start. Okay. Outline syllabus. Indicative. Indicative is a really interesting word when it comes to language within unit handbooks. Indicative really gets you off the hook, okay? If it said a guide, that means it would be inclusive and everything was there. Indicative means, oh, we're just indicating. Everything might not be included in this, okay? So it's a sort of bit of slippery word, indicative. Okay, indicative, current technologies in their application, your computer, Photoshop, okay? Research and formulating concepts, that will be your research folder and how you get your ideas together. Appropriate software, Camera on Photoshop. Designing workflow, how you use your camera, your computer, how you use the software and how you output it. Simple as that. Retouch and post-production, exact same thing. Retouching post-production is what you do in Camera on Photoshop, okay? Digital printing procedures, color management and quality control. That is quite important. And we're very, very lucky at AUB to have Lee Harper as one of the tech dem team. Lee Harper is a beta tester for Photoshop. He does not know about digital printing you could write in the back of a postage stamp. We're very lucky to have him. He's invested in a lot of technology there. He knows his stuff, and I've arranged for you to, you'll have workshops with Lee as part of your inductions, but I've arranged for you to have a printing masterclass with Lee during the part of this unit. Generally, it would be a hands-on one. I'd really want it to be hands-on because print is a tactile business. But again, we've got to work within the sort of restrictions we find ourselves in. But even an online extra workshop with Lee will be a good thing. Okay, method of delivery, practical workshops. Those will be the Zoom Photoshop workshops. Demonstrations, well, again, those will be mainly online. Projects and critiques, and we'll have critiques later on. I think the first critique you have, your formative critique, will be in January, and we'll talk about that closer to time. Okay, but critiques are gold dust. They're one of the best things we can do. We talk about your work in a meaningful way. Okay, this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, people. Okay, these are the learning outcomes. Okay, and I'm going to try and decode these a little bit for you. Okay, now learning outcomes are how your unit is assessed. Okay, are these three pillars are how we'll assess the unit, how we'll assess your work. Learning outcomes run right through the sort of academic marking process and assessment process. Be you working in physics, be you working in medieval French, be you working in photography. It's these metrics you use to assess work, okay? It's a one-size-fits-all system, okay? So we've got to put these learning outcomes, we'll look at your work and see if your work meets these learning outcomes, okay? Learning outcome 1, to demonstrate technical knowledge and practical skills to a fundamental level in digital capture and post-production, okay? So that's basically how you're going to use Photoshop, okay? And this is the use of Photoshop and how you're going to use your files within Photoshop. And later on, I will show you an exact matrix of how we mark this learning outcome, okay? Learning outcome 2, to demonstrate the ability to develop practical outcomes informed by research in response to the briefs. This is simply looking at your research folder, how you arrived at your ideas for your project, how you developed your ideas for your project, and how you delivered those ideas for your project. Okay, so this is the more sort of conceptual element. So how you got your ideas, how you developed them, and how you delivered them. Learning outcome 2 will be assessed on those criteria. Learning outcome 3, to demonstrate effective project and time management and the successful completion of project briefs, okay? Simply time management. And again, that goes back to the 200-hour law. If we go back and look at it and think, does what this person's given us, how much of those 200 hours do we think went into this project? Okay, so this is your time management, and this is the time you invest in it. This is what I says here, okay? So just to go through that again, learning outcome 1, how you work with your files once you get them into the software. Learning outcome 2, how you arrive at and how you develop and deliver your ideas. Learning outcome 3, how you use your time within it. Simple as that, okay? And these are the 3 pillars by which you'll be assessed. Okay, assessment components, project including research file, 100%. And again, there's a little bit of a breakdown here as well when it comes to learning outcome 1, learning outcome 3 as well. But again, I think they're a bit more techno speak. So just remember what I said there about the former 3 learning outcomes, and we'll go through them again just to make sure they come home. Okay, reference material. I don't generally give you books to read, okay? Especially for your key reference. Your key reference for this will be Deep McClelland's Photoshop CC 101 Fundamentals. That's your key reference for this, okay? And to complete this unit, you need to complete that course, okay? And this link here within this presentation will take you to that. That'll work for you. You probably have to sign in, but it'll take you there, okay? So again, doing that Photoshop course is probably the best thing you can do to start off your journey on this course, okay? So again, I'm not giving you a book to read. They don't really do books in Photoshop anymore because there's not much point, because the internet's a far better resource for it. And also as well, the software changes so quickly these days, okay? So again, use that link to get to LinkedIn, and that will be your key reference material for this unit. There's another list of things here recommended for you as well. There's a couple of things you can read. New Media Critical Introduction, a good book to read. But also as well, there's 2 links down here. There's one for colour management, which is a good link as well. But also there's a link to Julianne Cost's blog. One of the issues I have right now, and I'll try and fix that for you as we go along, is Camera Raw has changed very, very recently and very quickly, about 3 times. And there is not an in-depth tutorial on LinkedIn Learning for it, okay? And we'll be learning Camera Raw next week, but I will find some other resources for you to keep you up to date on Camera Raw. Also as well, the lesson I give you shall be recorded as well, so you can always go back and use that as a reference. But Julianne Cost is the person who does the Camera Raw tutorials for LinkedIn Learning. She's very good, and she explains very well on her blog what's been updated in Camera Raw. Magazines and journals recommended, always good to look at. British Journal of Photography, that's a good one too. It's sort of reinvented itself very well. Computer Arts, Computer Review, Hotshot International, Image, all good to look at. They're all in the library. You can get them there. They're all online too. Okay, the brief itself. The unit has 2 parts. It's a good idea to build a solid technical skills base in order to thrive in the commercial photography industry. But you should start to develop a depth of understanding that comes from applying concepts, ideas to your commercial photographic practice. You should choose one idea from the following list, taking inspiration from it to produce a piece of work that's commercial in nature, producing good quality evidence of your process and ideas in your research file. Your final submission must be a still photo output, edited in Photoshop CC, and no other program is to be used without prior permission or you'll be marked down. So if you're not planning not to use Photoshop, let me know and we shall talk about it. And based on one of the listed concepts below, you must produce a print. So we're going to ask you to do one A3 print, circumstances allowing, and a series of digital files. There are 2 project categories, advertising and documentary. You choose one of these categories. And when you've chosen a category, you choose one subsection within that category. So if you're choosing advertising, you choose one of these things here. You can do a fashion spread, student style, images for a fashion mag here. Remember, no studio images, location shots only. It'd be a good idea to start looking at Location Flash to do that one. Or you can do a mobile phone campaign, advertising images for a new smartphone. Or you can do a promotional pack for a newly signed band. Includes images suitable for CD cover, download thumbnails, magazine ads, no live gig shots, okay? So within that, you choose one of these, okay? If you choose advertising, you choose one of these and you go ahead and do that. If you're choosing documentary, you have 3 subsections within that as well. A life in a day. A documentary editorial shadowing someone with an interesting occupation, hobby, life. So again, you find somebody you think's interesting and you give us a picture essay on their life. You can choose You Are What You Eat, documentary, editorial, but food from social, political, and environmental perspectives. A very rich place to look at. Third one, On the Spot. Documentary editorial concerning significant locations dealing with their political, social, and historical context, okay? So you choose one of these 3 within documentary. So just to reiterate, you choose one category, advertising a documentary, then choose one subject for that category, okay? You are to submit one inkjet print. Do not use the Camura Lightjet printer, okay? So again, once more, as long as circumstances allow, we're asking you to produce one inkjet print, okay? And don't worry about if you don't know how to inkjet print, you don't know how to prepare. This unit will prepare you to produce beautiful color managed inkjet prints, okay? And for my money, I love the Camura. I think the Camura is a gorgeous thing. It's a gorgeous piece of tech, you know what I mean? You're getting a lovely glossy C print at the end of it. But for me, my personal taste is when it comes to digital printing, is a lovely matte inkjet print. They're absolutely gorgeous objects. I love them as sort of tactile objects. But again, It's your taste. It's whatever you want to have. You know you've been assigned to a group, A, B, C, or D. That's probably happened already for you. I'm still waiting for the groups to be sent to me, but I'm sure they will be soon. Okay. LinkedIn Learning and the advantages of. I was one of the people that sort of advocated for the institution as a whole to allow people access to this resource. I used to, when I was a freelancer, I used to pay £200 a year and gladly pay £200 a year just to access this content. These guys are the best in the world. They really are. They're the best at what they're doing. Practically anything in there, from code to Zoom to whatever, you can learn on this site. Take advantage of it as much as you possibly can. The guy who I learn most from in LinkedIn Learning is Deep McClellan. Deep McClellan is a bona fide Photoshop expert. That's all he does. He's not a photographer who uses Photoshop. He's an expert in Photoshop. He knows everything about it. And the course I've recommended on there, that one-to-one course, will provide you with an absolutely peerless and excellent foundation within Photoshop. I strongly advise you use this resource as much as you possibly can. You can even just dip in and dip out of it. If there's something you want to solve, go and find it in there, and you'll find it in there. And rather than using the wild frontier of YouTube, you know you can trust this one, okay? YouTube's great, but sometimes you've got to get through a lot of dross. There's guys out there who are setting themselves up as Photoshop experts, and some of them do know a lot, but some of them are dangerously misinformed about Photoshop and come away with stuff that's just not true. You know you can trust this one. Okay, now the fun part. We're going to look at some photographs, okay? We're going to look at the work of Phil Toledano. And all play being fair, if some of you guys are going off to New York next year, you'd have probably met Phil Toledano. He's generous enough to give us a talk every year. And he's a very interesting commercial photographer who really, really wants to be an artist, but that's okay. So, Phil Toledano. And again, once more, you know, things might happen and, you know what I mean, things will calm down. And at one point in time, we will be able to fly to New York at some point in time, and you'll probably get a chance to do it within the 3 years of your course, and hopefully you'll meet Phil. Now, the interesting thing about Mr. Toledano is the way he uses photography. Now, he uses photography to make these very sort of conceptual images and these quite fantastic images. But he tries to avoid using sort of computer manipulation. He's much more a fan of making sort of real and tactile mise en scene, if you want to call it, or objects for his photographs. Like this gun jacket, that's real. Those are real sort of plastic guns around this guy. Even the halo made of fighter jets is absolutely genuine. That's put together. It was hung in there with a nylon thread that he photoshopped out. So he's still manipulating reality, but he's doing it in a sort of in front of camera way, which is kind of interesting. This is another project he made about himself. And again, like, he's very interested in himself, Mr. Toledano. And what he did was he sort of had several possible futures made for himself. So he sort of projected himself in the future with different identities. And this is Hollywood Phil. So this is a guy who did a lot of plastic surgery, who really knows how to engage a camera when there's a paparazzi going on about a party, biting down these jaws so he looks like he's got an iron jaw. This is Fat Phil. And again, once more, all this stuff is done in front of the camera. Phil got a fat suit made. He got prosthetic makeup put on himself. But you're guaranteed there's a lot of digital post-production and stuff, a lot of stuff getting cleaned up at the same time. So it's not just physical stuff. But again, using yourself as a subject is kind of interesting. Also as well, there's no ethical problems with using yourself as a subject. Now, this is probably one of the most interesting to me projects he did, was A New Kind of Beauty, where he's tracked down people who were very much interested in perfecting themselves through cosmetic surgery. And if you notice, I'm choosing the words very, very carefully here, because it's one of the things that Mr. Toledano had to realise when he did this project, that he couldn't treat these people with disdain. He had to be treated with respect. These were human beings. At the same time, they'd chosen to do very extreme things. You know, they really, really changed themselves. Instead of altering themselves in Photoshop or anything like that, they'd altered themselves physically. They'd put themselves under a knife. And it's this idea of perfect beauty and what they saw as perfect beauty. And again, the whole sort of social and political with a small p, phenomenon of body dysmorphia. I'm not saying people have got body dysmorphia, but it's definitely a phenomenon that affects us today, which has been exacerbated, and there's no doubt about that, with social media and our access to information online. But again, everything about these people has been sort of augmented. I mean, those aren't real pecs, those are pec implants. Even the calves are implants. A very strange phenomenon, but dealt with in a very subtle and respectful way. Okay, Timothy Sachanti. Timothy Sachanti is a New York-based photographer. He's very much a young person's photographer. He's a guy who works very much in the music business, but also in advertising, works for big brands too. He makes interesting images. And again, this is straightforward sort of manipulation. You can tell this is mostly Photoshop done here. There's been a lot of work done in that. I believe this is a young person's band called Post Malone. Don't know who they are. But again, the thing that matters most about it is the idea. Somebody's the concept. You know, it's quite a painful looking concept with barbed wire going through somebody's eyes. And again, the idea is really strong. You knew it would be strong visually. You knew this would be an arresting CD cover, and it'd be an arresting thumbnail. Because one of the problems with the music industry these days, it used to be when you just had vinyl, you had 12 inches of artwork to impress people. You could do things with subtlety. Days. If you're working through Spotify, you're working through iTunes, sometimes you're dealing with a square that's millimeters across, and you've got to make an arresting piece of artwork for those millimeters across. Something like this works in that context. Okay. And again, this was something he did as well. I think he did this for Land Rover. And the reason I included this image is because it's a very simple shoot. It's a very simple shoot indeed. All he used for it is torches. I've got a video over here. I'll just show you the video quickly. Please excuse me for my computer buffers. Excuse me, folks. Panopto's decided to. I'll need to stop sharing for a second and start the sharing again. Oh, come on, what's going on here? Cool. Okay. And here's another video Mr. Sachanti made. Sorry about that, but Panopto sort of went bad. I mean, I obviously didn't like recording the video. So here's another one as well. And this one's sort of a little bit, shall we say, politically important right now. Okay, very simple idea. And again, you probably recognize the two protagonists within it, the elephant and the donkey, both of them representing the main parties in America. The elephant representing the Republican Party, the donkey representing the Democrat Party, and them fighting over food, doing a food fight. So again, a very refined, distilled idea to get a political point across. And that's what you usually find. Most good ideas are deceptively simple. It takes a long time to get something simple. Again, that focus and that simple. Generally, when people are quite woolly about their ideas, it means they've not refined them. Usually the best ideas are absolute pinpoint. They're absolutely sort of got precision, crosshair accuracy. Sorry about the breaks and that, people. It seems like Panopta does not like recording video. Okay, Matthew Bernard Lemon, a name like that, you've got to be a fine art photographer. But this guy does produce, from my point of view, interesting work. Okay, so here we have a very simple image, image of a forest with what you'd call Photoshop marching ants. This is what Photoshop and Adobe speak, these are marching ants. Marching ants are generally what you make a selection with. But you do something very simple. What the photographer has done is just place this little shadow here beneath these marching ants, as if this selection is a physical object within the image. So he's really playing with ideas of representation there and digital representation. This is something we see in screen a lot, but again, we never sort of place it as a physical object. There's no way you'd ever see a Photoshop selection in a forest, and this is the sort of ideas he's playing with. And again, he gives you these images that you don't really know, is this a digital manipulation? Is this actual? Is there a patch of ground here that's sort of a couple inches underneath this water? Is this water only a couple inches deep and he's managed to sort of hold this back? Or is this a digital manipulation? It asks those great questions. Is this somewhere between reality or digital manipulation? And it questions the idea of truth and digital manipulation. And again, the ideas of photographic truth, particularly as we live in what you call the post-truth environment. Truth's a very slippery thing. I don't think just by sticking a camera in front of something, taking its picture, you can call it true. This is an interesting work as well. It's called Monuments. And what the photographer did was he got data from China about their pollution output. And instead of making graphs, he visualized the data in this form. So these peaks are pollution high points from China. He's obviously used sort of Photoshop and computer modeling software to make these images, and then call them monuments. He's made these sort of monuments out of them. Okay, Rubin was quite an interesting boy as well. He's another guy sort of who affects and sort of manipulates reality and does this in an interesting way, like so. This is not Photoshop, people. This is not Photoshop. He's actually done this. He's gone out in the field with a drone with some lighting on it, and he's flown the drone around the mountain, and he's lit the mountain and slowly built up this exposure so you get this sort of hyper real image. Real precision is going on there. Real precision in the capture stage and real precision in the post-production stage as well. Same with this one as well. This is a drone painting this perfect cross above the ocean. And again, the real payoff for that is the reflection. Okay, W. Eugene Smith, one old school photographer I've included in this presentation because W. Eugene Smith, this is particularly for those people who want to do sort of life in a day. He was the master at this. He was an incredibly sort of fastidious photographer. He's one of those guys who's a great photographer but wouldn't like to be stuck in a lift with him. He nearly bankrupted Magnum. They sent him to do an assignment in Pittsburgh to take 12 images, and after about, I think, 3 years and 100,000 frames, they asked where their money had gone. They more or less had to drag him back from it, kicking and screaming. But one thing about W. Eugene Smith is W. Eugene Smith was a technical master. He was one of the best printers in the world. He would spend days in the darkroom using everything at his command to produce the most perfect image he could. And again, If he had about in these days, I know for a fact he would have loved Photoshop. He would have loved what you could do with Photoshop. Photoshop turns in photography into a far more interpretive medium. And Eugene Smith definitely interpreted these images. And this was just a day in the life of a country doctor. And all these images look sort of very much documentary, but they're not. You're guaranteed these would be very much composed and created. And the truth W.G. Smith was trying to get to was the truth about this man's life. It wasn't necessarily a truth that was unfolding in front of his lens. You're guaranteed he posed these images to get exactly what he wanted out of them, and wasn't afraid to go in there and tell people to stand in certain ways in front of certain ways, so he would get the composition he wanted. And again, absolutely fearless. I mean, look at this situation. This is sort of, he's in there with the camera. That kid's obviously in a lot of trauma. That's a really bad headwind. And also as well, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to have asked to look up so he got the perfect shot. But all the information's in there. Tells you a lot about the doctor, the white lines in his head, the kid's really ill. We even get a little thing there, tells there that the doctor's married. Loads of information. I mean, look at this one. This could almost be an advertising shot, except as a documentary shot, even right down to the view out the window. The hills in the background. It's got such depth as an image. And you're guaranteed that's really, really burnt in. All these are dodged out. You probably use bleach reducer in places. He's really interpreted this image. So again, he may be sort of mid-20th century, but the guy to go back and look at is a guy who builds a narrative like poetry. He's a really good guy to look at. Right up to the present day, Richard Moss. Richard Moss's latest project was called Incoming. He used a piece of military hardware, which was an infrared imaging device that could resolve an image over 20 kilometers. And he turned it on the immigration crisis that's going on right now. The subsequent video work was projected in the Curve in the Barbican on 3 huge screens, and it's probably the best video installation I've ever seen in my life. I sat there mesmerized for an hour. It's absolutely astonishing as a piece of work. The photographs are great as well, absolutely great. Again, it's this very strange, almost alien view of the world. And again, the thing that's actually giving you the image isn't light, it's heat. So this kid's hands are lit up by this mobile phone, and it's the heat from the mobile phone that's lighting up her face. And this is one of the most heartbreaking images, because this is obviously a mother with her drowned child. And the darkness on her arms is her heat coming out. And the child's obviously cold, and the only thing that's making the child warm is her handprints on it. You can see the space blanket here. I think the strangest thing about this project was that the way it made people look alien, made them look not human. And you think somehow that would distance you from it. It didn't. It made it all the more vital and all the more emotionally engaging. And as I say, the photographs are great, but the moving image work, if it ever shows again, go and see it. It's an astonishing piece of work. And he did use photography as well. He used, I think, what did they call it again? I think it's called an optopan, weirdly enough, the sort of palindrome of panopto, where he made these huge photographs where he got surveillance cameras to take individual images, and then he used software to stitch these images together. So you get these vast panoramic images of I can't remember what city this is, okay, but you've got a refugee camp within a football field or sports field. And again, you can see the city stretch off in the distance. You know, sort of really epic scale photography, but always the human element included. Okay, one quick one by Joan Sternfield, okay? This is for people who on this spot. And again, this could be looked upon as sort of a kitsch image of definitely mid-20th century. And you're going to probably guess mid-20th century America, aren't you? Because it's a motel, and motels are quite peculiar to America. And the colour of the image all these things, lent to these things in the shape of the car. But this floral tribute asks a question. And the answer of that question is, this is where Martin Luther King was shot dead. And I think it was 1964, I think, in Memphis. I think it was Memphis, Tennessee, he was shot. Yeah, it was. So again, once you know that political information, it gives this image a lot more weight. Now, the on the spot subsection is trying to get you to look at the relation between image and text. You need a textual or spoken context for this image to give it its full weight. It's an interesting image in itself, absolutely, but once you have that political, social context, it has more weight. So no matter what, some photography will always have a relationship with text, or always have a relationship with spoken word. An interesting thing to look at. Photography is a strange medium. Photography's, I remember when somebody first told me, it really sort of horrified me. Photography has no future, doesn't have a future. It's a very dead medium, and it's a very silent medium. You work within those confines with photography. Not to say it's a bad thing. Now, this is one, I'll look at a blog called Colossal. Colossal always gives really good contemporary photography. And this is a deceptively simple project of something very kitschy, budgies. But they're just incredible. If anybody's ever worked with animals, particularly in student light, you know how difficult these were to produce. But these are beautiful portraits. I mean, this one especially, look at that. I mean, that's like some sort of glamorous Hollywood couple posing there, but they're budgies. Once more as well, and that's every high street photographer's dream, isn't it? To get a couple looking like that. But she's managed to do this with two feathery, not very friendly things, but very simple, very beautiful, and very frivolous. There's nothing wrong about frivolity. Not everything has to be serious. And again, lovely subtle colours, really nicely captured. Just nice, tasteful, well-observed photography. Okay, Nick Knight. Nick Knight's quite a big gun in the industry, you probably know. He's a really interesting photographer. He's more an artist than a photographer, who once more has the sort of privilege of working in both the fashion worlds and the music worlds and the advertising worlds. He did study at AUB way back in the day on the legendary HND course, so he is one of our alumnus. So he's a good guy to look at. He's also a good guy to look at even if he didn't come to AUB, because he always does interesting stuff. And this is a project he did, it must be about 20 years ago for Dazed and Confused, but I still think it's a great project. He got people who were differently abled in and shot a fashion spread with them and made some stunning images, just me. This one's amazing. It's a Blade Runner. Again, staggeringly arresting, beautiful images. And again, doing everything fashion does, but having another context to it, which makes it all the more interesting. Again, simple, beautifully executed photography. Even down to the pose, the slightly sort of robotic pose and robotic look to get that sort of marionette look. He's playing sort of very arch jokes there. And look at the shapes in that. And the strength involved in that. That guy's holding himself up one arm. Okay, last photographer I want you to look at, Cameron James Wilson. This is Shudo. Shudo is a model you can hire through Cameron James Wilson. Now, Shudo's interesting in the fact that Shudo doesn't exist. Shudo is entirely computer-based character. Cameron James Wilson learned computer modeling. He made Shudo. He's now got his own modeling agency called the Digitals, and you can get in touch with him and hire the Digitals. So this was the first model he made. who does not exist. So what you would do is you would map as a texture your clothes onto Shudo and get her posed the way you wanted her to pose. And it is pretty convincing. This one, not so much maybe, but it's getting there to the fact that maybe in the future, we just won't have models anymore. You won't have real people. What you'll have is these computer-generated images, and you'll just use them. And if I hadn't told you she was computer-generated, would you not? Would you, sus? The last thing I'm going to show you is actually Cameron James Wilson, and this is the guy that made him. And he took a lot of stick for creating obviously an African model. I make no moral or social judgment on it. I'll leave that up to you to decide what's right or what's wrong in that situation, especially in the days we find ourselves in right now. We live in sort of very heightened political days when it comes to such debates. Okay, so let's finish the fun bit where we look at all the pictures. So once more, still images. You're to produce one A3 inkjet print. The rest of your work will be handed in digitally as PSDs, Photoshop documents, TIFFs, big image files, and JPEGs, internet ready file format. The images can be fashion, advertising, editorial, documentary, or portrait related. The only stipulation is that image must work as a series and must possess a quality and sophistication that's compatible with your intended market. Part 1 requirements, minimum of 6 images, minimum of 6, maximum of 8, I would say. The images should be of a high quality and presented appropriately. For advertising, the production values will have to justify a campaign of 4 images. So if you're doing advertising and you want to do 4 images, that will have to do that. Your images should reflect your level of Photoshop knowledge and muscle use of layers. This will be through image composites or adjustment layers. I would say image composites and adjustment layers. You must include your original Photoshop documents with all the layers that show your full working from the original raw image to the final image. You'll be marked on the quality of your image, whether you adhere to the correct dimensions and the organization of layers in your finished PSD file. You should also supply scans if you've used film, raw files of your original images, a flattened TIFF file from the PSD at 300 pixels per inch, and JPEGs 1000 pixels high wide. Don't worry if all that's a bit of a word stew to you right now. As we go through the unit, you'll find this stuff out. It really isn't rocket science, which will be fine. Assessment elements, what must be handed in. All digital files, including research folder, must be handed in via WiseFlow. Yeah, I think some of you already use WiseFlow so far. Don't worry if you've not. I will give you some WiseFlow tuition later on, closer to the time. A, scans, TIFF or PSD files from your film scans if you've not shot digitally. Raw, your original camera raw files, only for the images you're submitting. Okay, so don't give us all your raw files, just the images you're submitting. Give us the raw file for those. PSD, your chosen images contain a non-flatted master in PSD format, showing all of your layer working from the original to the final image. Okay, those PSDs will be how we'll be marking you against the first learning outcome. TIFF files, flattened TIFF files from the PSD files ready for printing, color corrected and sized appropriately according to the brief. Okay, so those will be A3 TIFF files. Okay, and we'll still be using TIFFs because TIFF is still a very useful non-compressed file format. Adobe engineers still love TIFF, so we still love TIFF. JPEG files, JPEGs ready for use, 1000 pixels high or wide. Research file in PDF or Word doc. Research file must be word processed. Handwritten work will not be accepted. Your print, A3 in plastic sleeve with your name and course and unit clearly legible. But you don't have, folks, okay, so don't worry too much about your A3 sleeve, okay? Don't worry too much about that at all. If you just buy a cheap A3 sleeve from the shop and hand it in, you won't be marked down for it, okay? Research file. Keep full evidence of your work during the unit. Think of it as a diary of your progress, and don't be afraid to include everything. Your research file should evidence your project research in terms of the subject matter and should show your increased understanding of digital issues and technology. You must demonstrate the progress of your actual images and record or make notes in workshop sessions. To help build your sketchbook, consider the following topics. Forget the word sketchbook, use research file. What do I want to achieve by making this work? Does it answer the brief? How does it connect to other photographers, artists? How can I push my ideas further? How can I be using text shots to progress your work? Remember, the research file must be word processed. Handwritten work will not be accepted. And use the research file for you, okay? Write stuff down as you go along. Everything you're doing, just get a loose leaf folder and just print stuff and put it in, and then just collate it at the end, okay? Use it to serve you, okay? It's a useful thing to do. You've got to do a short written evaluation of your work, maximum 1,000 words. Okay, and that should be absolutely easy for you by the time you finish your project. Okay, and again, you can go through these bullet points, okay, which are in the unit handbook and in this presentation to give you starting points for how you're going to do your 1,000-word evaluation. All work will be handed in digitally using YFlow apart from your print. YFlow training will be given close to the time to hand in. And those of you who've used YFlow know it's a very easy process. It's not a difficult process to go through, so you'll be fine. Once more, we'll tell you where to hand in your print close to the time. I'll probably hire out one of the studios and get one of the people from the faculty office to come down and pick it up there. Okay, we're just going to go through the learning outcomes one more time just to get them home, okay? These are the criteria which you'll be assessed by. Learning outcome 1, to demonstrate technical knowledge and practical skills to a fundamental level in digital capture and post-production. Okay, this is how this learning outcome will be assessed. It will be assessed using this precise matrix, okay? Are your PSDs in correct color space? Adobe RGB 1998. Tick. JPEG safe to the correct dimensions? Tick. Evidence of logical post-production technique implementing adjustment layers and layer masks? Tick. Print clips correctly prepared? Tick. Print has correct exposure and color neutrality? Tick. Get them all right and you get learning outcome 1. Simple as that, okay? It's a tick box. Learning outcome 2, to demonstrate the ability to develop practical outcomes informed by research in response to the brief. Okay, that's simply, as I said before, that is your concept, how you develop your ideas, how you test your ideas, how your ideas evolve, and how you deliver them, which will be evidenced in your research file and in your images. And it's how your images relate to your research file. Learning outcome 3, simple again, to demonstrate effective project and time management and successful completion of project briefs. So again, this is just your timekeeping, how you've used your time within this unit. Simple as that. Now here we have how you will be assessed within this unit, okay? When we go to YFlow, this is the matrix we are given to go through and to see if you've passed or failed this unit. So we'll assess you individually on the learning outcomes. We'll see if you've got a pass or a fail, and we'll give you feedback individually on each learning outcome, and then we'll give you summative comments on your whole project, okay? So this is how your unit will be assessed. So that's the matrix of how it happens, okay? So I'm trying to be as transparent as possible here. I'm trying to show you exactly how we're going to go about this unit, okay? I'm not trying to do the Wizard of Oz, but I'm not hiding behind the curtain. I'm letting you know how we're going to do this so you understand this as well as you possibly can do. And if you don't understand, please ask me questions about that. Okay, I will email you the Zoom link and OneDrive link for the assets and for the lesson each week in plenty of time. I've already emailed you the OneDrive link and the Zoom link for next week's lesson. So again, you can get them. And within that, please have the assets downloaded and saved to a folder on your desktop before the lesson. So be waiting with the assets on your desktop before we start. Please enter your name in the chat as you enter the Zoom meeting so we can record attendance. But like I say, it's more about engagement. Don't get too hung up in it. The attitude towards attendance in these times is far more lenient and far more cuddly, shall we say. Please only use the Zoom chat for asking me questions. It'll get messy if you chat to each other. So only asking me questions, use the Zoom chat, but hopefully we can talk to each other during the lessons. Please make sure you're using the same computer for Zoom as you're using for Photoshop. You'll need to share your screen with me at certain points. I'll need to see your work and see what you're doing, okay? So don't be having your Zoom on an iPod and working on your computer, okay? Make sure it's the same computer so I can see what you're doing, okay? Please ensure you have the very latest version of Camera Raw and Photoshop installed. And Camera Raw and Photoshop have just been updated. So make sure and update them, people, because there is some sort of fundamental stuff going on there that we need to look at. I think the developers at Adobe have had a lot of spare time over lockdown, and boy, have they got busy. They really have. They've been sort of updating Camera Raw every 5 minutes, it looks like. Okay, so yep, make sure you've got the latest one so we can talk through what's on, the latest stuff that's on there. And the latest stuff that's on there is pretty good, particularly Camera Raw. I really like what they've done with Camera Raw, and there's some really interesting stuff in Photoshop as well. Remember now, folks, you shoot RAW. That's what you shoot. You don't shoot JPEG. You're professional photographers now. You shoot RAW files. Okay, so shoot RAW. Make sure your camera is on the RAW setting. It is essential you use a mouse in these sessions. Okay, you can't use a trackpad to use Photoshop. No way, especially right clicking and stuff like that, using pens. Even better, use a Wacom pen. When I operate Photoshop, I use a Wacom pen. And if you're not used to using a Wacom pen, I'd strongly advise you buy one. And just to get used to using it, do everything with it. When I first got my Wacom pen, I had my mouse, put it away. I did everything with a Wacom pen. I went on the internet, did a lot with the Wacom, so I just got used to using it. It's a really subtle, delicate tool. It's hard to master, but it's really useful. But failing that, you've got to use a mouse. And if you've not got a mouse for your laptop, even the cheapest, nastiest mouse you've got put through a USB port, couple of quid, as long as it's 3-click, use that, okay? Last little bit of philosophy. Nothing is original. Nothing. Steal from anywhere that resonates, inspiration or fuels your imagination. Devour old films, new films, music, books, paintings, photographs, poems, dreams, random conversations, architecture, bridges, street signs, trees, clouds, bodies of water, light and shadows. Select only things to seal that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and theft will be authentic. Authenticity is invaluable. Originality is non-existent. And don't bother concealing your thievery. Yeah, do bother concealing your thievery, because in a commercial course, we don't want it done. Celebrate it if you feel like it. In any case, remember, it's always what John Goddard said. It's not where you take things from, it's where you take them to. And that's by the arch independent filmmaker, Jim Jarmusch. But in our case, because we live in a commercial context, don't get caught. Try and cover your tracks, okay? And one last thing in the presentation is, I'm at the stage in my life where my heroes are starting to die, unfortunately. And one of the greatest documentary photographers who operated in Britain died about a week ago, called Chris Gillett. He produced a piece of work called In Flagranti. And In Flagranti is one of my favourite documentary projects ever. Absolutely beautiful. And I really strongly recommend you look at it. And he said one of the best things ever, it was an opening text of In Flagranti, is one of the best things ever, if you ask me, that was said about documentary photographer. And he said, this work is a metaphor about a fiction. He knew how slippery truth was. He knew he was constructing something. He trusted his construction. Okay, so that ended the presentation. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to look at the chat. Hello, is there anybody there? There doesn't seem to be any questions in the chat. Does anybody get any questions from me that want to stick in the chat?
Yeah, Martin, do you need to, when you do the LinkedIn stuff, it gives you a little certificate or something at the end, doesn't it? Do you need proof of, like, you've done the course?
No, not at all. I won't be marking you on that, but I'm just trusting that you will do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you use Capture One at all?
Can you use Capture One? I would prefer if you didn't for now.
No worries.
I prefer to use Camera Raw. Again, one of the things about the digital world is it's good to have a knowledge of all software. Yeah. Not that I've got that much knowledge of Capture One. It's a good idea not to get into habits, because habits will be taken away from you. Yeah, so have a look at what I'm showing you. If it doesn't rhyme with you, and if you really, really want to use Capture One, we'll talk about it.
No, it's fine. I can use both. It's fine.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. I understand the final outcome is digital, but can we use film? Absolutely, of course you can use film. You can use film and scan it, but as long as you get an opportunity to scan it. Can you email you at any time with questions about the lecture, even organise a one-to-one Zoom call? That might be possible. You can't email me at any time, really. Sort of like, 1 o'clock on a Sunday morning would probably not be a good time to email me. But within reasonable grounds, and you've got to remember that I am a part-time lecturer, okay? So if you do email it, I will get back to you, but generally I'll be in 2 days a week, okay? I will look at my emails every other day and get them that way. And again, if we have got time within those 2 days, we can get a one-to-one Zoom call, okay? But again, I do other works. I hope that answers that. Is the research file a separate file to the one we have to create for principles of practice? Yes, it's absolutely separate. It's just peculiar to this unit. So again, when it comes to handing, you will have probably no assets in unison with principles and practices. Can we use any camera? Talk to me about that. If you want to use any DSLR or any mirrorless camera, that's fine. If you want to go ahead and use an iPhone or something like that, talk to me about it. Let's negotiate that. But again, practically any sort of traditional digital camera or film camera can be used in this situation. Can we do our digital research files as a PowerPoint and then export it as PDF when it comes to handing? I suppose you can do it, yep. But again, I would encourage you to get out your comfort zone and start using things like use Word. You can even use InDesign as well. Okay, I mean, again, don't go with what you know so much. If you find PowerPoint easy to use, I find PowerPoint quite a blunt tool for it, but it's entirely up to you. But if you export it to a PDF, that'll be fine. As long as you can view it as a PDF, that'll be absolutely fine. Okay. Are there any more questions? Any more questions at all?
Yeah, just one more, sorry.
Can I use Lightroom to edit the photo first and then take the photo over to Photoshop? We can negotiate that as well, but I'd really prefer if you had a look at what Bridging Camera Raw can do and be able to compare the two. I use both. I use both Lightroom and Camera Raw. I'd like you to get the handle around both and see how similar they are, okay? So once more, as I said to other people, don't get stuck in habits. Habits are the bane of the digital practitioner. Be nice and flexible, okay? So have a look at what I show you. And again, I don't think there's anything you can do in Lightroom that you can't do in Camera Raw. They work from the exact same engine. Okay, can you explain the magazine spread with a little more detail? Have a look at, go and look at Dazed and Confused, go and look at Vogue. Look at what sort of fashion you're going to shoot. Have a look at the context of the platform you want to shoot it for. So again, if you're shooting for young people, you're going to be shooting for a young person's magazine. So go and have a look at something like ID or something like that and see how they lay out a magazine spreads, okay? And the general rule of thumb for a magazine spread is you want a double page spread, a DPS. You want something that goes across 2 pages, and you want something that could be used as a cover image that will have teasers on it and have the name of the magazine on it as well. That will have the graphics on it, okay? So go and look at the magazines you like, look at the way they do their spreads and tailor your images to them. Have something that could use as a DPS. Remember, it's going to have staples go down the middle, and something that's going to be used as a cover. In future Zooms with you, we'll be talking more about what's expected of this project and timeframes, etc. As an example of photos online that we can see just as an idea. Yep, I can email you sort of, well later on, be emailing you research files and things like that. You can ask questions about the brief as we go along. That's absolutely fine. As we do things. Everything that's expected of you in the project is within the unit handbook, so have a look at that. And again, I will get examples to you, and I'll show you examples within last year's work of and what sort of marks they got. Is Camera Raw the same as Photoshop? Sorry, confusion there. Camera Raw is not the same as Photoshop. Camera Raw is Photoshop's raw processing engine. And you'll find all about that next week, okay? It's the way you get raw files into Photoshop. Would be able to see example work and get an idea of presentation. Yep, I just said that, so yes, you will do. Is there a system to find people for modeling for AUB? Not that I know of, no. And again, in pre-COVID times, it was a lot easier because you could just talk to people as you met them around at campus, but it's going to be a lot more difficult right now. So again, maybe there's Facebook groups you can work with and things like that, but I don't know of any system to get models from. Can we include any text in the photo essay? The person asked that question, can they sort of see what you mean by any text? Oh, right, I've got any text in the photo essay. No, the photo essay must work itself as a series of pictures, okay? You can use context within your research file to back it up, but again, tell us what's going on, but try and get your photo essay to work as a visual narrative, okay? Try and get to work as a sort of 6-line poem. As part of our research file, can we include mood boards to show inspirations and thoughts and process? Absolutely, of course you can. Yep, there's an AUB Facebook, glad to know that. There's a Facebook club for models, that's good. Cool. Okay, we know there's Facebook. Is that brilliant? Link in the new chat. Has MD any more questions at all? Any more questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, folks. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience with my terrible internet. Hopefully that's going to give you a good starting point to get on with the project. And remember, we'll be handing this in January. January feels like a long time away, but it's not that long away. We're nearly at the end of October, people, okay? So the time is ticking, okay? But as I say, remember, it's only photography, okay? So I'll see you all in your groups next Monday. Hope you have a nice weekend. Take care of yourself and go well.